Well, what's going on, everybody? We're back. It feels like it's been longer than normal because Ole Miss had a Thursday game last week, and then it was the holidays, the Thanksgiving, and everything like that, and no game this week, and a lot going on this week for us. So tonight had to be our show night tonight. And Nick, other than watching the miserable performance that ended up being the Egg Bowl, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. It was good. Yeah. Outside of the game, still got to enjoy the game with friends and family. Had a good time. But yeah, just wish we could have pulled that one out. But yeah, it was good. How about yours?
It was good. Yeah, it definitely sucked watching them lose. It certainly could have won that game. Had plenty of opportunities to win that game, but overall was a good Thanksgiving. And just glad to have been able to celebrate with family and
Right.
and uh, and all that kind of stuff because you just never take them for granted. But
Absolutely.
so yeah, the regular season is over. Ole Miss is done. They are awaiting their bowl seed or place or whatever you want to call it. It went from looking like a sure thing that they'd be in a New Year's Six to now the most recent projections. The most popular pick is the Music City Bowl, is where Ole Miss will end up in Nashville. There's a couple of outliers, a ReliaQuest Bowl in Tampa by a couple of people, but for the most part, everyone thinks it'll end up being the Music City. And the most popular opponent pick is Illinois in the Music City
Yep.
Bowl. And boy, they have some defense
Yep.
with Illinois. So that would be an interesting matchup. Of course, that is all pending the outcomes of conference title games this
Right.
weekend and anything else that goes on that may or may not affect the bowl games. Conference title games aren't really going to affect Ole Miss much, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Whether or not really the only thing that could affect Ole Miss is LSU. If they lose to Georgia, that would be their third overall loss. And Alabama would then get the Sugar Bowl spot, you would have to think, for the
Mhm.
SEC if they don't sneak into the playoff. But
Yeah.
somebody's going to have to lose for them to get in. So all that remains to be seen. But as of
Right.
now, Ole Miss is most projected to go to the Music City Bowl. Nick and I, of course, will have a bowl game preview show for you at
Yep.
some point once we know when and what bowl game they will be in. Nick, promising season early.
Right.
Started off 8-1. Of course, had the really rough game down in Baton Rouge. It kind of took the wind out of everybody's sails, and then bounced back with the win in Aggie Land the next week to go to 8-1. And well, that would turn out to be the last game Ole Miss won this season. They followed that up with a heartbreaking loss at home to Alabama, which was majorly affected by officiating. They then followed that up with a brutal, embarrassing performance in Fayetteville, with, of course, the rumors swirling around Lane Kiffin and the distraction and who knows what all caused that to go down. And then, of course, to finish off with the heartbreaking loss at home to Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl, unable to pull out 3 consecutive Egg Bowl wins. And Ole Miss finishes the season at 8-4
Right.
overall when it's all said and done, and they end up with 4 conference losses as well. So they went from second place, or actually first place, the SEC West at one time, all the way down the middle of the pack, which is certainly tough to swallow. But on the
Right.
positive side of that, when you look at it, this was actually still an overachieving year from what everybody thought Ole Miss would do,
Right.
losing what they did, who they did, new,
Right.
brand new coordinators, brand new team, 45% of the roster is brand new. Basically a freshman quarterback, even though he's technically a sophomore. But as far as game action is concerned, essentially a freshman quarterback, a true freshman running back leading the way, another transfer running back who was injured a lot of the season and did not get to play nearly as much as we would have liked, and obviously a banged up offensive line at times, which certainly didn't help. All that to say, it sucked to lose those 4 out of the last 5 games, no doubt.
Absolutely.
But when you take it and look on the other side of that coin, an 8-4 season after losing what they did last year, I would take that. Honestly, I would. That's more than I was struggling to really come up with a better year than that. I thought maybe 9-3,
Yeah.
because I thought they would win the Egg Bowl.
Yeah.
For sure, I thought they would win the Egg Bowl this year. Obviously, the Arkansas game you just never really know about in preseason projections.
Yeah. I agree. Like you said, with what we lost after last year and not really sure what we had coming in, outside of, high school players, it was hard to see, like you said, maybe I gave ourselves probably a 9-3 season ceiling, you know, probably thinking, close to the 7-5, 8-4 range, maybe even a 6-6. But, I think it's hard. It's easy to look at the first, 9 games and versus the last, 3 games and be discouraged, I guess you could say, because how it started and how it ended. You never want to go on a 3-game losing streak to lose the season, but I guess that's what bowl games are for. You got a chance to go out with a win, send off the seniors with a win, and get that bad taste of the egg ball out your mouth and have that going into the spring. Getting that bowl win, and just having that. Even though it's a bowl game, it's not. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but a win's a win. No matter what game it is, it still counts. It's going to go on the record at the end of the season. Yep. So you could get to another 10-win season, and I mean, if you're looking for something to put on Lane Kiffin, he hasn't been losing. He's winning. No. He's done everything. He's winning. So and I think it's hard for players, whenever, whether it's high school transfer, to look at Ole Miss and how fast what we went from, I think it was a 4-8 season in 2019 or 18, and then you're winning back. You have back-to-back 10-win seasons 3 years later. So it's a good pitch to new players wanting to come and play for Lane Kiffin and be in Oxford. So I think and obviously what we had was like you said, basically a freshman quarterback. Yeah. With his lack of inexperience or lack of experience, a true freshman running back who played beyond his years, looked like
by a long shot.
And and I wanted to find out if we could get him his last 2 stars, maybe.
Yeah. Former 3-star recruit.
Yeah.
Somebody didn't know what they were doing ranking him out of high school.
And then, like you said, losing, your best defensive player in Sam Williams, who was putting pressure on quarterbacks constantly. And then the linebackers we lost, and Mark Robinson and Chance Campbell, you just really didn't know coming into the season. One, you didn't know who the quarterback was going to be. You had an idea maybe after the Sugar Bowl it was going to be Luke Altmaier, but obviously you see how that went. And then you look at a defense, you still got some guys coming back, Otis Reese, AJ Finley, guys like that, DeAndre Prince, but you don't have anybody, in the middle of that defense that you're saying, oh, well, this guy is going to be the guy that, like Chance, and it kind of went like how Chance Campbell was. Troy Brown came in and filled there, and he did a great job. So I think as an Ole Miss fan, you have to be pleased. Obviously, you never want to settle, but, I think it definitely could have been worse this season.
Yeah, overall, I mean, Lane Kiffin is 23-12 at Ole Miss.
Right,
and that counts a 5-loss COVID year in his first year. So, right. I mean, overall, Lane Kiffin is winning. Now, while we're on that note, of course, obviously a lot of people are attributing the last 2 weeks of the season in particular to Lane Kiffin and the saga that was Lane Kiffin to Auburn or not and what's going to happen there. While, yes, I do think that some of what happened was on that, here's the thing, and I've said this over and over, but it's really hard to convince people of anything on Twitter, okay? People's opinions are very strong on social media, mine included. So, I mean, hey, I'm right there with you. Everybody has the right to their opinion. That's what makes Twitter so great. Lane Kiffin never, ever discusses contracts in the season. Yeah, he does not do it. He didn't do it last year, which last year was all fabricated anyway. He said very early on to everyone who needed to know, I'm not interested in any of these other jobs. It was all mostly fabricated by social media. This year, yes, he was interested. There's no denying he was interested. He didn't deny he was interested, but he's not going to talk about it. That's not how he operates. He never does. He never will. That is who Lane Kiffin is, and the players understand that. So we talked about it before the Egg Bowl and before the Arkansas game that, yes, they're 18 and 21-year-old kids, and, one side of you says, well, he should tell them or make it clear one way or another. The other side of you says, they know what they signed up for. It's essentially a business in college football now. And when Jimmy Sexton is your agent, you do what Jimmy Sexton wants you to do. I just think that Ole Miss was a young team who wasn't ready for Fayetteville, regardless of the
Yeah.
situation. We haven't won in Fayetteville since 2008. I mean, so it's not just Lane Kiffin keeping us from winning in
Right.
Fayetteville. And then the Egg Bowl is always weird. It's always wacky. It's always stupid. And quite frankly, I put most of the blame for the Egg Bowl loss on the offensive coordinator because of the calls, the play calling that was happening inside the red zone. And whatever you want to say about, well, Lane Kiffin, should he have called the plays? You can, but Lane Kiffin has specifically said, I only call the first drive. I don't call any of the rest of the game. Should he? Yes. There's the reason you're the head coach. You know, all that to say, that's where I would put more of the blame than distraction is play calling. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Charlie Weiss there. It's his first year in the SEC. It's hard to be a first-year coordinator in the SEC. So I would hope that maybe he's learning a lot in this experience. Chris Partridge, it was his first year at the helm as the full defensive coordinator. Last year he was kind of assistant to Durkin. This year he's kind of the main guy. So it's really his first year calling all the defensive plays. So coordinators have to learn too, just like players. So I'm not going to take shots at the coordinators. I think that it's a learning curve for them too, and we'll see how things go next year and if they've learned from this whole season like all the players have. Lane Kiffin turned out to not be going to Auburn. He declined the offer. So for any of these Auburn fans that love to say, well, we never wanted him anyway, it's amazing how that always happens. Yeah. No, he declined you. And now they have Hugh Freeze back in the SEC. He's going to be the head coach of Auburn. That is surrounded by much controversy and loud voices on either side of the equation. Man, I don't know what to think about. I'm not going to say one way or another on Hugh Freeze's personal life. Okay, we know what he did at Ole Miss. He's admitted it. That's all we know about. I don't know the man personally. I certainly hope that he is living what he says he's living now, and that's all we can hope for. So I didn't want him at Auburn because he's a good football coach, and I don't want Auburn to be good. But I think Hugh Freeze is going to make them good. I think he's going to be dangerous recruiting. So that's an interesting hire. So Freeze back in the SEC, Kiffin still in Oxford on a $9 million a year or so deal, 6 years to start with 2 through the foundation, of course, 4 from the state, potential to roll it over to 8 at some point. A lot of mixed feelings on that. You know, is he really worth it? You want to keep him, you got to pay him. And he's winning football games. I mean, that's just the plain and simple.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. Absolutely.
Now we've gotten through all that. The season's over. Kiffin's staying. Now it's transfer portal season. That's where we're at now you got bowl game season really, but the transfer portal window opens in 4 days, December the 5th. So Nick, you always have great keys to games. I'm sure you have great keys to the transfer portal. Because obviously, I don't think that we're really going to go after any quarterbacks as much as I would like to see us add another one, just because I don't think depth is ever a bad thing to have in the quarterback room. Running back probably won't be a thing either. I have my thoughts on what we should go after. I'd love to hear yours. Portal season, take it away.
Well, I think it's almost like it's an NFL draft. It's, obviously you're not guaranteed anything like you are in the draft. Say, hey, you've got the 5th overall pick, pick your poison. But, I think, and we've seen Lane Kiffin do it. Obviously, you got to go after what you need. And I think, it's going to depend on, what Zach Evans wants to do. If he's going to want to end up going into putting his name into the draft, if he does that, I think we definitely go after another running back. And I think that running back is a very appealing Ole Miss is a very appealing spot for running backs at
especially
this point.
Now.
Yeah, with because and you and I have talked about before, with people thinking that Lane Kiffin runs this, big time throw the ball offense, but he loves to run the ball. His offense, you got to run the ball, and that's really if you talk to anyone in football, that's a way to control the game. If you can run the ball well, it's going to set up that play action and whatnot. So. That, I think you definitely have to go for defense, because, I don't think there's any particular spot that you say, hey, this is what we got to go after. I think just as a whole, our defense, could use a little bit more depth. And I think obviously you're probably going to have to see what you got in some receiver, maybe, with Malik Heath and Mingo going to be gone. So I believe Heath is gone, right? After this year,
Uh,
I believe.
I believe
I'm
so.
pretty sure he's a graduate. Was a
He
graduate
did
from
have the
Mississippi
graduate
State.
patch on,
Yeah.
so I
So
don't think
I
we're
think
gonna.
you got to go for some receiver. And it's really going to come down to it doesn't matter what we think. At the end of the day, there's one guy that's pulling the trigger on this transfer portal. We know that Lane Kiffin.
Portal
That's
King himself.
the old king. Yeah. So it's and I saw I'm drawing a blank on his name. The guy from Alabama, the 5-star
Yes.
that entered the portal. I forget his name.
I'm trying to find it as we speak because now I'm blanking on it too. But he was a wide receiver from Alabama that entered the portal.
No, there was also a 5-star running back, if I'm not mistaken.
You may be right. There's so many. I have been trying to keep up with it, and I've lost. There are so many guys that have entered the transfer portal over the last couple of days. It is absolutely insane. I think you may be right. There was a running back and also a wide receiver, both out of Alabama that have entered the portal. Texas A&M had a running back enter the portal as well. So yeah, I'm
Texas A&M has had a few guys enter the portal.
Yeah, imagine that. I wonder
no surprise,
why that is.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing how they get paid a bunch of money to come there, and then they would rather leave.
The guy from Alabama is Trace Sanders. He's
okay.
Yeah, he's out of from IMG Academy. So he was the number 1 rated running back coming out of high school. So
yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Now here's the thing: I don't think Zach needs to leave, and here's why.
Right,
because he was hurt most of the year.
And it's kind of like the Ely thing, It's kind of So
and Ely has not panned out, unfortunately, and doesn't look like he will. Now, some of that it was brought on by himself, as was made very public by the team not too long ago. But he should not have left. He wasn't ready. He was too small. And he just didn't. He had not really put up the kind of numbers that you need to enter the draft as a running back. Zach Evans ended up with only 899 yards and 8 touchdowns this season, and he was the guy that everybody was talking about coming in from the portal because of who he was. Quinshon wasn't even on the radar. It was all Evans, and then Ulysses Bentley. You hardly ever saw him because he got hurt early on. He only ended up with 73 total yards. For the whole season. He hardly played. So I think if Zach is smart, he would stay and try to get a healthy year under his belt. I don't know what's in his head. I can obviously understand that he might be trying to just, get the money if he's getting, my fear is bad advice. My fear is agents will sometimes, tell these guys one thing when they shouldn't. And, these kids, unfortunately, will jump in too soon. And we've seen it far too often where a kid that should have stayed at college ends up jumping to a draft in any sport and definitely should not have done so at that juncture. It's not that I don't think Zach has the ability by any means to be an NFL running back, but I think he needs to get a healthy year under his belt if he really wants to get drafted in a high spot.
Yeah, I think the flip side to that is, obviously we were thinking he was going to be the guy, and he has been banged up. But you have Quinshon Judkins, who's had the year he has, and God knows what he's going to do next year. So, I mean, it could be possible him thinking, hey, I might not be playing as much. That could be a possibility, him saying, okay, I'm going to stay. He gets hurt. So there's always two sides to that coin.
Yeah.
And it's a hard decision to make, these kids, because it's what they've been dreaming for their whole life. You get drafted to the NFL and go play NFL football.
Yeah.
And for an agent or a family member or whoever, coaches, to tell them, hey, I don't think you're ready. It can be hard on guys sometimes, even because whether they want to or not, truth aside, they think they're ready, because like I said, it's what they want to do their whole life. So, I think it's, and that's a thing that takes time. And I think obviously, like you said, we've seen where both sides of the coin have been, helped some guys out and hurt other guys, so just, you always want what's best for the player. That's what I've always said. What I love to have him back next year? Absolutely. I wish everyone could stay, but that's just not that's not possible. And you just want the best for them at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about them, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to fault a kid for trying to go pro.
Right.
I mean, that's what they
Yeah.
want to do, like you said. I just my problem comes in when you know for a fact that someone gave them bad advice. And you can tell the ones that got bad advice. You really can.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's easy to tell when they go undrafted and end up on a practice squad.
And as far as the portal goes, I'm with you. Defense is huge. Cornerbacks, man, we need some cornerbacks.
Yeah, we need some corners.
We need some corners. Obviously, I would say we need some linemen. But the thing is, what personnel are you going to try to use?
Yeah, because I think that's what you got to figure out first before, you got to.
Year in, year out, we hear it. It's been for like the last 3 seasons since Lane came to Ole Miss. It's been the 3-2-6. That a lot of fans have problems with it. The problem is the personnel that Ole Miss has is for a 3-2-6. That's just what they have. Now, we've seen them stack the box before. They were effective at it. They just didn't do it a lot because that's not what they were trained in, essentially. So you've got to determine what you're going to do. But I think if we saw Ole Miss be very effective when they got pressure on quarterbacks.
Right.
And Ole Miss had to be one of the most held teams in college football this year. It sure seems like it anyway. But
wait, did you hear that whistle?
Yeah, I didn't hear it. When you got a guy like Jared Ivey who is just getting yanked to the ground half the time, but we're not going to go into that right now.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother rabbit trail. But, I think you got to make a decision on what kind of personnel that you're going to play on that front. And then at that point, you need to go still get some because you got to have depth. And it's one thing I feel like that hurt Ole Miss a little bit this year. They had depth in certain areas, but not some areas. And you got to have a full depth across the board. So I would like to see Ole Miss go out. I know it's a little bit unusual. They're not the big name. The linemen aren't the big names in the portal, but I would love to see them get some linemen and then get some cornerbacks rather, or safety, something out there because I know DeAndre Prince is a senior. I cannot remember if he's still got his extra year.
I think he's still got his extra year. I want to say
so. He might come back. And then you have a couple other guys in that same scenario that may or may not be there next year. So you've got to. I'm looking forward to seeing how Davison Igbinosun improves this next year. Obviously, he had some great moments. He had some rough moments. He's a freshman. I think he's really going to be a vital piece to the defense next year. So looking forward to that as well. But yeah, it's really hard. And wide receiver, I think is so. If I had to just pick what I'm going after, if I was in charge of the portal, it's defense first, then wide receiver. If Zach leaves, maybe running back before wide receiver. But you pick and choose there what you feel like you can get the best. But defense has got to come first, I feel like, because Ole Miss, we know already has the ability to score. But they did not do well at stopping opponents late in the season this year. And you run through that, kind of cakewalk they had this past season. That won't be the case next year at all. We've already talked about their schedule for next year, and it includes Georgia. That we know just off the top of your head, they're going to be playing, Tulane, who is a very good team. All of a sudden, they got on the road next year. Alabama is their first SEC game next year. Then LSU, then Arkansas at Auburn. That'll be a big one. Vandy, A&M at Georgia, ULM, Mississippi State. So a brutal schedule next year. Certainly not as soft as it was this year. So defense, in my opinion, is number one.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, defense played well at some times and just was bad, to put it. I mean, they were bad. Yeah. And I think, it was just kind of, to me, what stood out is there was no consistency. If you're going to be a bad defense, there's also always going to be some bright moments, but it's just about that consistency for me. I'd rather have a team that was average all the time than having these ups and downs.
Yeah.
Just if you're gonna be average, be average.
Yeah.
So but it won us a couple games. Kentucky, you can point at that and say, hey, defense won us that game. I thought at the end of that A&M game, I thought, that there were moments there where that defense played really, really well. Against Alabama, it had its moments where the defense played really well. So, it's just getting over that hump. And I think once and it's hard, when you have all these transfers, that, and I guess towards the later end of the season, it can't be that big of an excuse, saying, hey, we haven't been playing together. But that's kind of, if you're going to go heavy on defense in the portal, that's kind of what you're going to have to expect year in and year out.
Yeah.
These guys haven't played together a lot. And, if you can get some good high school guys that are coming in and where you can build that core and say, hey, I've been playing next to this guy for 3 years now. Okay. So it makes a difference. So, I think, like you said, the offense can score, but there late in the season, we had some, you get into the red zone in these big games, against these SC opponents like Alabama or whoever it may be. You get in the red zone. I mean, with the offense that we have, you should be at least scoring a touchdown 3/4 of the time. So, I mean, but hey, I'm not out there one that's calling the plays nor catching the snap, catching the balls, throwing the balls. So it's easier said than done, but it just, and it was like that last year too with the red zone offense. Were just kind of, they had their struggles down there. So, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the Egg Bowl is such a good example of that.
Yeah,
because Ole Miss had so many opportunities to score early, and they ended up with 3 straight field goals.
Yeah,
Quinshon Judkins not touching the ball for those first 2 drives, it just blows your mind. But again, I'm not a football coach, so I'm not about to sit here Monday morning quarterback a college football coach or a coordinator or anything of that nature. It does give you questions like, why are we doing this? Why is it this way? Again, first year coordinator it's a hard position to learn,
especially in the SEC.
The last school that Charlie Weiss was at was Florida Atlantic. So you're going from Conference USA to the SEC. That's a big jump.
Big jump.
Conference USA's got nobody. There's no big defenses there.
You got what you got, but I mean, so it's a whole different.
You go from that to Alabama, Auburn, LSU. I mean, this is a whole different ball game. So I'm not going to jump all over him too much. I just want to see improvement next year on both sides of the ball. That's what I would like to see. Just like I would like to see improvement from the players. I certainly want to see improvement from Jackson on some of the throws that he's made. But he's a 19-year-old quarterback. He's going to make mistakes. We talked about that early on. So overall, I'm proud of this team. I'm proud of the way they fought through adversity. They made the game against Arkansas respectable, at least, even in the face of all the noise around them. They fought to the end of the Egg Bowl. The Egg Bowl always gets weird, so you just never really know who's going to win that game. So that's just the way it goes sometimes. Overall, an 8-4 year, you're still going to a bowl game, and losing what they did is a very, very good season. Guys, we've been so appreciative of our sponsors all year long. I hope you guys have taken advantage of checking them out. Hotty Toddy Tents, well, the season's over for them, but you guys can bookmark that website for next year and be sure to jump on them early next season for all the home games. HottyToddyTents.com, the best tailgating service in all of college football. I guarantee you that. They are just fantastic. They will set it up for you. They will take it down for you. You're going to want to keep that website handy for next season because I promise you're going to want to use them. They are the best. They will take care of you better than anybody else. So bookmark them for next year. Be ready to use them and jump on them quick, especially for the big games because it sells out really quick once conference play starts, especially. DeadSoxy.com. Well, hey, you don't have to wait till next season for them. You can still be all over that website getting your socks. Hey, the NIL socks are released. You've got Quinshon Judkins out there. You've got Troy Brown socks out there. You've got several different players now who have locked up NIL deals with Dead Soxy. Check them out, deadsoxy.com. And even better, use the code RebelWalk for 25% off site-wide all the time, so you can get a little bit of a discount on those NIL socks. Help out the players, help out the NIL, and you can do all of that at deadsoxy.com. Speaking of NIL and speaking of Quinshon Judkins, not only did he just win the C. Spire Connerly Trophy this past week and become the third consecutive Ole Miss Rebel to do so, much to the chagrin of a bunch of Ole Miss Mississippi State fans out there, but that were crying for Emmanuel Forbes to win it, which you could make an argument. I'm not going to, Forbes was great, had a great year, but overall the best player in the state of Mississippi, I don't think it's close. It's easily but he just signed his NIL deal through 23-24 with the Grove Collective. That was a big announcement. So he is locked up, per se, for Ole Miss next year. And obviously there was a kind of a hold your breath moment with that before we knew that Lane was staying officially, because everybody was wondering if he was going to follow Lane to wherever Lane went, if Lane left. But he is on board, and so is Lane. They've both signed the dotted line, and they are here. Quinshon going to be tearing up the field next year officially. Still waiting on the big corporate sponsor announcement. Hasn't quite happened yet that we were expecting from the Grove Collective. That was supposed to be another partner. That was also kind of contingent on Lane staying. Now that that's official, maybe it'll be next week. They'll announce that now. Might have got pushed back a little bit. Who knows? So big happenings in the NIL for the Grove Collective and for Ole Miss. We are set in that area. Easily one of the top programs in NIL now. And there's no arguing that, despite what Auburn fans might want to say. Ole Miss is doing just fine in NIL.
Speaking of Auburn, I wanted to ask you what you thought about Hugh Freeze's comment about his little leapfrog.
Yeah, he took a little jab at the Rebels. I thought that was a little bit classless because Ole Miss gave him his first big opportunity, and it wasn't Ole Miss's fault that you fell from grace. It was yours, Hugh Freeze. Ole Miss did not call those escort numbers and all that. You did. So I thought that was a little bit low, but, it's college football. I'm not going to, Hugh Freeze has this way of like giving an insult without it really appearing to be an insult. It's kind of how I had nothing against them. And, I thought I enjoyed our time there. Really did. But, this leapfrogged it. Yeah. Okay. Sure. You did. You can't even control your own social media accounts reportedly, although he refutes that. They had to hire a PR firm to deal with you because you're jumping into people's DMs that you shouldn't be. And you've got John Cohen as your AD. I don't think it's a better job there, Hugh. I wouldn't want to deal with John Cohen every day. He wouldn't even answer questions at Hugh's press conference.
Yeah, I thought that was, the guy that makes the hire. Isn't going to answer questions.
The guy that helped bring Hugh Freeze down before now has to introduce Hugh Freeze as his head coach. Yeah. That is some funny karma. I'm just going to say that right now.
I think another, funny thing, and when I heard it, I didn't get to watch it live, but I watched it later on in the day, Hugh's press conference, and obviously Cohen spoke before, and Cohen said, all along, Hugh Freeze was at the top of our list.
Yeah. Okay.
And I kind of was like, believe what you want to believe. Yeah. And that's kind of what I told myself whenever Hugh said, he leapfrogged where he was, if that's what they want to believe, if that's what they want to portray, and that's who they want to be, good for them, if that's what they believe. But I got news for him, and it's hard to say whether or not Auburn's a better spot for Hugh because we haven't got to see, what he's done. But, 2 or 3 years down the road, we'll be able to say, hey, you were right.
And obviously, Hugh's not going to walk in there and say, well, this program sucks. I hate being here. Right. Obviously, he's not going to do that. I did find it amusing that after his press conference, he went on Paul Feinbaum's show. And Paul Feinbaum mentioned the dysfunction that is the narrative at Auburn and how they kind of chew coaches up and spit them out. And Hugh did not refute that. He basically just said, well, I think that if you're an SEC coach, you're just not right in the head. And we all think we can come in and fix things. And that's kind of how we tick. And based on our conversations, I think we're all willing to work together. So he essentially said, it's dysfunctional around here without saying it. I thought that was pretty amusing because he did not refute that in the least. And when you're working for John Cohen, it's just honest truth.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I don't think he's totally wrong. I think a lot of these coaches in their own right are a little bit crazy, and you kind of have to be to do the job that you got to do. And also thought it was cool to see that he was going to keep Cadillac Williams because I
Yes.
thought the way he kind of, albeit who they were playing there late in the season, even Hugh said it, and I agree with him. You could see the way that they were playing those last few games of the season. Cadillac had those guys fired up. They were playing hard. So, and it's always good to see, a guy. And, it was hard, whether Cadillac knew it or not, he wasn't going to be the next Auburn coach.
Yeah.
They were going to go get somebody. But, it's cool to see those kind of stories where, this guy, although he's not going to be the head coach, he's going to be associate head coach.
Yeah.
But he's still in the program, and it's cool to see that he's going to stick around there because I think what he did those last few weeks of the season was pretty cool. Almost beat Mississippi State. I was sitting there kind of like, come on, Cadillac, come on, Cadillac.
Should have beaten Mississippi State. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was not a fan of him keeping Cadillac just because Cadillac's going to be able to recruit really well there.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I am happy for Cadillac. He is well.
Right. Yeah. You got to be happy.
He is just a class dude, class act all around. And whatever you have to say about Auburn as a whole, Cadillac is all about Auburn. He's one of their best players. I still remember when he played there.
Yeah.
He was one of the best running backs that they've had, and fantastic guy. At least from all appearances, seems to be really just a class act. Really loves the players, loves the school. So yeah, I thought that was a good move by Hugh. I think he would have faced a huge backlash had he not kept Cadillac.
And to be frank, I don't know if John Cohen might not have, and you never know, but may not have given him a choice to, hey, you gotta. Yeah. It's contingent on you taking Cadillac. You gotta take Cadillac.
Who knows, man? All the ins and outs of that, but. I hope that, like I said before, I hope Hugh is doing what he says he's doing. And that's because I don't wish ill will on anyone. I know he's done some really stupid things, and he's made himself look really bad. And there are a lot of people that have their mind made up about what kind of person he really is. I don't know the man personally. All I know is what he claims to be. As a Christian myself, obviously, it very much is no fun seeing people who are very public that profess Christ have these kind of disgraceful falls because of infidelity or DMing the wrong people or whatever the case may be. Because then the narrative is always, look at these Christians. See, it's always the Christians. Well, that's not true. Hugh Freeze isn't me. I didn't do it. He doesn't represent me. So that part bothers me. So it was tough when he was at Ole Miss and when the fall from grace happened. I was working in sports radio at the time, and all these people were texting and calling and talking about, see, it's always the people who throw Bible verses out there and this and that and the other. I'm like, well, that's not all of us. That doesn't encompass all of us. I know not everybody watching or listening is professes Christ, so I'm not trying to be throw a sermon at you guys or anything. But it's tough when you're like me and you profess Christ and you see all this going around with people like that, and it's going to follow Hugh wherever he goes. So I sincerely hope that Hugh has truly changed, that he is who he says he is. That said, I hope we whoop him every year. I hope he never wins. I hope he has losing seasons every time out. I hope he can't recruit, and I hope he gets fired in 2 years because he can't win. But all that aside, I don't wish any ill will on him as a human being. I hope he's a terrible football coach at Auburn, and he never beats Ole Miss, and he never beats Alabama, and anything good happens. I hope nothing good happens to that football program whatsoever. That was kind of harsh, wasn't it?
Hey,
yes.
I can't like to have a little fun. We like to have a little fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's been a real pleasure, guys, bringing you all these shows every week. We're not done yet. We're going to have a bowl preview show whenever we find that out, and we'll probably do a recap or something potentially after the bowl game. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. If they lose, maybe not. I don't know. But we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll keep up with the transfer portal and how things are going in recruiting. I'm hoping that I can get Leanne involved at some point. You guys all know Leanne with the Rebel Walk. She's our recruiting guru. I'm hoping that we can get her on at some point to talk recruiting because that is her expertise, and she will have all the information on that. So hopefully we can get her on in some form or fashion to talk recruiting. So stay tuned for an announcement on that if I can get that worked out. And we'll see what other kind of guests we may can bring on at some point because I always love bringing guests on, and you guys always love hearing from them as well. Ole Miss will probably play before Christmas, so we probably won't have to worry about it. But just in case they don't, I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. Enjoy all that. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. And obviously, if it is indeed the Music City Bowl, which seems to be the popular pick right now, that will be before Christmas. So we'll talk again before then. But he is Nick Filipich. You can find him on Twitter at Nick Filipich11. That is Filipich, as you see right there on the screen. And you can see mine at Austin on Air 1021. We didn't get a background made today just due to busyness and schedules and whatnot. So that's why Nick's Twitter handle isn't on the screen. But want to make sure I throw that out there. You guys be sure and follow him and follow the Rebel Walk to stay up to date. It's hoop season now. Pretty much fully. Ole Miss has a big-time game coming up this weekend in Memphis, which is my neck of the woods. So we'll see if I get to go or not. But they beat them last year. We'll see what happens this year. Memphis still a little bit squirrely at times as well. So potential big resume-boosting win there as well after they came up just short against Oklahoma. Still played them really well. Still waiting the return of Deshaun Ruffin as well, which will be huge for that offense. We'll talk more basketball and stuff as we go. Maybe I can get TJ. Maybe we'll figure that out as we go along. But until then, guys, thanks for tuning in. 8-4 Ole Miss finishes the season. Going to go bowling for a chance for that 9th win. Lane Kiffin signs the dotted line. Quinshon signs the dotted line. Who's next? We'll find out, and then you'll find out as well. Until then, have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time. Hotty toddy as always.